Hello everyone, welcome to MoonKids Tutorials. Today we will discuss the layout of Databricks. Just get yourself familiar with the Databricks layout, how it looks, what heads we would be using for our further lessons, and just make yourself aware about this layout so that you can work accordingly. Now there are three personas given over here. One is data science and engineering, machine learning, and SQL. Now, if you see here, based on what persona you select, the layout of the whole uh, UI changes. Now, it is expanding and collapsing. Let me click this option to keep expand always. Now, you can toggle this on and off over here. You can collapse or you can use auto. It will expand when you uh, select this area. Otherwise, it will collapse. Now, let me click this option of expand. Now there are three personas over here. Based on data science engineering, we have this layout. If we click machine learning, we got a different layout. If you see here, workflows, experiments, feature store, model serving. If I click on SQL, we have a different UI. It is more related to SQL editor, workspace, queries, SQL warehouses. So we have started our training based on data science and engineering, and I'll give you more information how this UI looks like and what are these heads about. In further lessons, I'll explain you what this machine learning and SQL UIs are. Now, if I go one by one, now this is a workspace. Now, workspace is a place where you're gonna keep all your project. You can organize them based on the folders. You can create a folder over here and just like test and just go on. And under that folder you can organize your notebooks over here. So this is the one way you can create your notebooks. Well, it is specific to the Databricks UI. Now I have explained you how to connect to the repos in the one of the previous lessons. Now in repos also, you can go to the repo what you have linked. Underneath that repo you can again create folders, test folders. Under that test folder, you can create your notebooks. Now, the benefit of using repos is whatever work you are doing, you can keep merging it in the GitHub and you can keep your version safe. This is an interesting one. Now, Recents has the list of all the notebooks what you're working on. So you don't have to navigate always to Workspace and find out your respective notebook. Sometimes you work on more than one notebook. So come to the recent section, find out what notebook you're working on and select it from here. Now, there is okay, default cluster. If I go to recent, if I open this notebook, if I write, so yeah, it is working. Now, this is one of the way you can access your recent notebook, but if you want to navigate to a specific one, then you can go to your workspace, go to the respective folder, what you are using, go to and create your notebooks over here. The difference between workspace and repos is in repos you can keep your different versions of notebooks merged with the GitHub repository, and but in workspace it will stay over here only. In recent, I've told you, you can pick up your recent notebooks you're working on. Now, this compute first. I'll give you more information on data later on. So this is our compute section, which will have the cluster. Now, this cluster will come default when you create a Databricks account. So if you click on this one, it will give you the option of editing also if you want. You can terminate the cluster. Better to keep it 60 minutes or 30 minutes, because if you're not doing any activity, it will be shut down by itself. Now, Databricks runtime is very important because this pick up the latest one what you have, because runtime is the set of softwares which runs on the machine. So if your machine has the latest software, so you can use the latest commands given by Databricks. There are certain deviations in the commands like create table and all. In the past, you have to give delta as one of the option to create delta tables, but now it is by default in the latest versions. So if you create any kind of a table in the latest runtime, that table will be a delta table. Now this is, if you're not using it, you can terminate, you can delete also, you can restart, or you can clone from here. Now coming to the workflow section, this I'll keep you explaining, in the coming lessons how what these different heads are, but I'll give you a high-level overview. This is a workflow section which is used to create job. Now, what is a job? Job is a process what will run at a scheduled time, or you can trigger it by yourself. So you can write the commands in your Python notebook. Once your project is ready, then you can create a job over here and you can refer your notebook over here, what notebook you are using. I'll give you a detailed information about this section later on, but the high level is this is to for scheduled jobs. This will create the cluster on the go. It will not, it can use the underlying cluster which you have created over here, but there is no point of using those clusters because the workflows is a set of jobs, and job cluster is uh, started when the job starts and it terminates when the job completes. So there is no dependency on the clusters which you always create, which is like a persistent one, but the job clusters are better one to use. So this is the workflow section which will deal on that. Marketplace, if you want to buy something from here, Partner Connect, there are different ways you can ingest data using Partner Connect. There are various options you will get how, what source kind of sources you can connect to your Databricks account. You can transform the data, you can visualize it, you can store it in the Parquet format. Now, this is a new layout of enable new UI, which is a different one based on what we are showing to you. But this is nearly the same. The way it is used is nearly the same. Now, in the menu options, if I do auto, it will expand if I go over this section. Otherwise, it will collapse. Let me keep it expand always. Now, I think you got a fair idea about all these heads under different personas. If I go over here, these all are different dashboards, data related. Okay, I have to tell you about data related in data science. Now, this is one of the most important thing actually in this section. So data one, now there is a Hive metastore which is by default given by Databricks. So whatever you create without giving any schema name and all, or database name, it will land up in Hive default. But if you give something, if you create a schema and if you use that, then that particular uh, metastore will be used. Now here it will store the data table definition, schema definition, as well as the data. I'll tell you more in detail in the upcoming sessions what is only the storing schema and table definition, or what is storing data with the schema and table definition. Now, if you see here, there is no option if I can upload a data to over here. Now, it is called DBFS, which is called Databricks File System. It is not here by default. So what you have to do is you have to go to Admin Settings, Workspace Setting. Under Advanced section, you can go to DBFS, enable this option. You have to refresh your page to make it affect. Now, once you refresh it, you go to Data. Now here you got the option of Browse DBFS. Now this Browse DBFS is database Databricks file system. You come over here. You have these kind of options: file store, mount, temporary user. If you go to file store under tables, you can upload any set of files what you can use in your notebooks. Now this file system will keep storing your files, which can be of any format, which can be CSV, JSON, Parquet, any format files you can store over here. You can mount the different directories. You can use TMP folder for your temp processing, or you have a user also, which I'll explain you. You can create those folders on the go and use those directory structures to keep your data warehousing data or any kind of data you can. Now, if I come over here in the browse DBFS, if I want to upload the data, I will come over here, file store, under tables. If I create a new folder, new upload folder. Once I come over here, I click this option. If I go to upload, now here, if I can uh, drag and drop files over here, or I can click and browse data. So this section is used to upload data directly over here, which can be accessed in the notebooks later on. Now going to the recent section, if this is the notebook what we were using before, if you have multiple notebooks, you will have a list of notebooks over here. Now print command will print over here. Now there are some magic commands which I will explain you in the next lessons. Now those magical commands is basically used to use different kind of commands in the same notebook. With different kind of command means you can use SQL commands, Python, any of the file system command in the same notebook. Now, if you see, notice over here, if the notebook has a language over here, Python. Now, if I click over here as a SQL, now which will make every cell, new cell as SQL. If I go down, it will keep creating SQL. Now, if you have a SQL notebook like this, but if I change it to Python, then every cell will convert to Python. Now, if under Python, you can also execute SQL by using percentage SQL, or in the SQL notebook over here, you can use Python commands. Now it is SQL by default. You can use Python commands by writing Python over here. Now, if I remove this Python, see this Python has changed this cell to Python, but other cells are still SQL because this is a SQL notebook. Now, if I run the print command over here, hello, it will not work because this is a SQL cell and I cannot execute a Python command over here. But moment I write percentage Python over here, it will change this cell to Python. Now, if I execute now, it will execute well because this has become a Python cell now. The best time to select this option is when you create a new notebook. So if you come over here, if you create a new notebook, create new notebook. Once you create a new notebook, the first time you should do it over here and then you start working on it. You should not change in the middle of it. That is not the right approach. Now, if I go to the recent section, now I have two notebooks over here. I can switch to any notebook I want. So this is the notebook what we had before. And there are many magical commands I'll give you in detail in the next chapter, but this is the way you can have your markdown text. You can use Python or you can use SQL. So this is the layout of Databricks. Just click all these options and find out how it looks like. In the next upcoming lessons, I will give you more details on creating schema, creating databases using those magical commands and in Databricks, and you will have fun learning with me. Thank you and keep watching Moon Kids tutorials. Thank you.